There we go. So
Cool.
now we are actually recording video as well.
Great.
So what I'm going to be doing is pulling out clips. So be
Yeah.
interesting, no pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll try
Anyway,
my best.
so yes, thank you so much for playing the amazing role of helping me like kind of get this thing started.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
were my first interview when I had no idea what I really wanted to do with this, and so you were like my guinea
Yeah.
pig,
Yeah.
and it really helped shape what I wanted to do with this. And so thank you also for like letting me do part two. Hopefully it will be a
Yeah.
little more structured. I have actual questions that I want to ask
Yes.
now from
Yes.
what I learned from part one and also from my interview earlier this week with Jono. Um,
Yeah.
so uh, if it's okay with you, let's dive in.
Yeah. Let's do it.
First of all, we have an hour, but at the very end, I have a speed round, like a lightning round, because I'm
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be asking everybody the same five questions.
Nice.
So I'll keep an watch on the timer here. Um,
Perfect.
but those are the like top of your mind, asking everybody the same questions,
Cool.
trying to get like, some interesting answers on those.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Um, so first off, I want to revisit like your specific thinking on a couple of things. So you've written that AI overviews may lead to traffic declines,
Mhm.
but higher impressions, and that ranking past position two in AIO citations often has little value. Can you just
Mhm.
help talk to me like, I don't understand because I don't. And
Yes.
like unpack it so that somebody who, isn't in your world could better
Mhm.
understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So few years ago, Google launched AI overviews. And this is what you see. You don't have to change anything about the way you search or the way you use Google, but Google is now serving these features at the top of search results. Similar to what they've done in the past, this is not new. I think a lot of people are think about AI overviews as this concept of zero-click search. And zero-click
Mhm.
search has been around for a while, right? They used to
Mhm.
do it with featured snippets. I
Right.
remember, 10 years ago, I remember going to a presentation with Will, and he did this whole demo of how old is President Obama, and then it appears on the phone. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy!"
Yeah, yeah.
Like so. It's been a thing for a while. This idea of zero-click searches. But what AI overviews represent is a further layer of depth and nuance within zero-click searches, where in the past, definition content or simple translations or simple directions, that's what you were looking at when you're looking at, zero-click searches. Now the conversations can be a little more nuanced, a little more robust, and Google is trying to serve these AI overviews. Sometimes they're really good. And I'm sure we've all had that experience where you search something, it's like, oh, this is really helpful. And I know these brands in the citations. I trust this. I can move on with my day. I'll also search things and find citations that are helpful. And so that's one important point that I feel like a lot of marketers miss, and a lot of people who work adjacent to marketing, is just because an AI overview is present doesn't necessarily mean there's no clicks to be had. One of the brands that we work with that saw the most success when AI overviews were released was a franchise of urgent care providers. And this franchise had an SEO strategy that they created all of this FAQ content, really good content that answered questions people were searching relative to their symptoms. So the one that caught my eye was, why is my nose running, but I don't feel sick? And as soon as AI overviews came out, that query was served with an AI overview. This client had a citation, had their link in the first result, and their click through rate spiked, their traffic spiked. because that's a tough question to answer. You're not going to necessarily be able to diagnose what is happening just from the AI overview, but you can kind of get a taste of what the response is going to share. And you can say, oh, I know this provider that I've seen them. I've actually gone to them before. Let me see what they have to say. And they had all this really good structured content very specific to that. So those examples exist. They're difficult to find. It's a little bit of a needle in a haystack situation. There's ways to do it. It's just not intuitive. It's not something Google is really serving up on a silver platter. But that's kind of what I think about with AI overviews and the potential. Sometimes, maybe to kind of close, sometimes an AI overview is going to represent no opportunity for traffic. Sometimes it's going to represent even more opportunity for traffic. Sometimes it's going to represent an impression that maybe is really valuable. So if you think about insurance and how much they're always jockeying for position in the consideration set, they invest so much money, so much budget, just so you maybe think about Allstate or Progressive or whoever when you hit that moment where you're ready to change insurance policies. You think about the value of Allstate or Progressive or Geico being in the mix, even if you're not getting a click on that AI overview, I would argue there's some value there, right? Like
Right.
you're not paying for that visibility, but you are getting in front of a pretty relevant potential customer or existing customer. So my point there is that there's just nuance. AI overviews don't necessarily equal zero click. They don't necessarily equal good or bad. There's nuance, and this is all just part of how search is evolving.
So unpack more about the past position two.
The past position too. So there's been really good data, really good study, and Kevin Indig has done a lot of really good user testing on how people actually work within AI overviews, how they use them, what they're using them for. And in that example, the why is my nose running, but I don't feel sick, I may click on our client's response. I don't know that I'm going to expand the AI overview citation to see all 5 responses and then make a choice. So that's where the value of, hey, maybe technically you're ranking in the AI overview as a citation. Maybe even some of your content is being used in the response or the overview text. But if you're not one of the first 2 citations, that ability to drive traffic is probably going to be pretty
Because
far
it's all
down.
being pushed down.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And in most cases, you have to click to expand within the AI overview to see anything
Right.
below. Yeah.
Okay. You've also talked about brand mentions becoming like the new links, and
Mhm.
that they need to optimize for inclusion and models innate knowledge. So, what's the approach there for brands that aren't household names?
I think, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there's a few different things I think on this subject. Anybody who's worked in SEO or leveraged SEO in the past 10, 15 years, you understand the value of links. And a link or a backlink is just part of the Google and search engine currency, right? The old metaphor is this is how people are voting for your content or your brand. In today's search landscape, doesn't necessarily need to be a link to count as a vote. A mention is going to get you there as well. Now, when it comes to, well, how am I going to compete? Let's say I'm a community credit union, and technically I compete with a Chase or a Citibank, or even
Mm-hmm.
a PNC, like a regional bank. How am I ever going to compete? Well, what I would say to that brand is focus on your audience, focus on your core services, and use some of that to your advantage. So if you only serve a very specific community, and that's the audience you're going after, what within that community can you saturate? What kind of local businesses can you partner with? What kind of local publications can you partner with? And in this case, it's a bit easier in some ways than it used to be, because in the past we might say, oh yeah, I can get a link or I can get a mention or I can get a partnership established with my, local weekly publication, but the authority is so low, it doesn't even matter. In today's world, if you're trying to go after a specific community. Like, I really want to get in front of Collingswood, New Jersey. And so I want to be mentioned in the Collingswood town crier and have that mention be visible on their website. That is going to help you be visible for, hey, I'm looking for a bank, even if I don't explicitly say I'm looking for a bank in Collingswood, because these platforms know they can intuit. We've told them all of this stuff about us. So yeah, that's my thought there.
That makes total sense. Um, so, like I mentioned, I spoke with Jonah Alderson
Hmm.
earlier this week, and he suggested that AI may favor truthful, trust based signals over marketing fluff.
Hmm.
Given your work on AI
Hmm.
overviews that we just talked about and model inclusion, do you think this gives an advantage to brands that have that strong reputation or ecosystem presence? And then how do smaller brands compete in that world?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think if you're a smaller brand and you're especially a smaller brand in a services space, you really have to prioritize reviews. And I think there's so much opportunity
So,
here,
like
right? In
testimonials.
Yes, reviews, testimonials. So again, like if you're, let's take the community bank in Collingswood perspective, how are you soliciting positive reviews within Google My Business or within other prominent places that are listed when people are searching for your products or services? And I think right now, because teams are small, right? It's hard to
Yeah,
do everything. So you might have a system for how you address negative reviews, and you might have a system for just collecting inbound reviews. You might not have a system for how you are soliciting positive reviews and pushing out requests or thinking about how do I bring this in? And we know that, I forget what the data is. It's like for every one bad review, you might have 10 good experiences that nobody talks about. Well, that becomes a really important thing as we move forward in time. And the one anecdote I'll say, because this just came up on a sales call yesterday, where Nick Hagler, who I work with on a
mm-hmm.
lot of our projects, we were talking to a prospect, and he was like, "Man, the trust signals on your product pages are the best I have seen." And we saw a correlation between that and the visibility and the citations of ChatGPT choosing this brand's content to include as a citation. And those trust signals were, it was all third party stuff. It was all legit things. So things like their Trustpilot review and their G2 review, all of that was hard coded on their product pages. That I think is a really, really good strategy for moving forward. And if you're, you have to play within the space you're in, right? So if you're that local bank in Collingswood, then there's not going to be all these, software review sites that are relevant for you. But what about your local branches, their Google My Business reviews? What are the other ways, like Best of Collingswood Award type thing? There's always a way, right? There's always a
Right,
way if you think about it.
right. Even if you have to pay to play, get in there. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So Jonah also argued that websites may become less central, more hubs of records. And
Hmm.
you've talked about letting large language models scrape your content and brand mentions. How do
Hmm.
those two things align? And where should websites evolve in this current and
I think,
future world?
yeah, I think so. Something I heard about a lot, I don't hear about it as much anymore. So I wonder if there's a level of acceptance that has happened. But there was initial conversation around, well, I don't want to let ChatGPT or Claude or all of these providers scrape my website. That's my content. They're not going to give
Yeah,
me something for it. And our take was always, okay, I get that. And sometimes it's challenging when your content is your product. And so if Google or these models are finding a way to capture content that you've got gated on your site and they're serving it up through AI overviews or through ChatGPT, and that is happening, there's ongoing litigation happening as a result of that. We're also kind of living, for better, for worse, and more so for worse, we're living in big tech's world, right? Where they're kind of doing whatever they want to do. And even if it's against the rules, it's like, okay, well, tell me what the fine is and I'll pay the fine, right? We just saw this with Anthropic Claude, where as
yeah,
part of their trading data, they used all these pirated books, and it's like, okay, you can't do that. That was bad. And now you have to pay $1.5 billion. And Anthropic's like, okay, then we'll pay
Here's your
$1.5 billion.
money. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think about that mentality, and it's not meant to be hopeless, but it's also meant to be an acceptance of where is all of this going? These models are going to get whatever information they want. If you are prohibiting them from seeing your content, you're getting in the way of users who might be looking for your brand and your content. And that training data, which is a really difficult piece of all of this, because it's kind of just the black box. We don't know exactly what is in there. We've got our guesses, we've got our hypotheses. There's some level of data that, at least from the GPT-3 and 3.5, they used to share more with us. So we've got some ideas of what it includes. But if you are preventing your data, your web content from being a part of that black box, it's not going to help, right? It can, in my opinion, it can only hurt. And so that's our general mentality. Sometimes, like I said, there's nuance. If
It's almost like
your
an
con
like you're being a Luddite in this new AI world.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like you can be that, and then you need to expect that your customers are not going to find
Not
you
going to find
digitally.
you.
So,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I'm hearing more brands being worried about like stuff not being indexed than I am
Right.
hearing. I mean,
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, there's a lot that are like, how do we keep the bots out? But
Hmm.
yeah, they're more worried about not being indexed. Like
Yeah.
I was talking to um, a brand last night who just realized that they've got this amazing FAQ that's not indexed. They're like,
Yeah.
no. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right. And that's
yeah,
the stuff you really, really want indexed. Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Another big topic that came up was in the past, search was absolutely deterministic, and
Hmm.
AI is probabilistic.
Hmm.
And how different users, will see different answers, and that's, the way
Hmm.
AI works. So, how should marketers design for that variability?
Hmm.
And does it break the concept of building one site for all?
Hmm.
Because also, to be blunt, personalization is also dead, but not because AI makes
Yeah.
everything one to one.
Hmm.
And yet, most product experimentation is very much so focused on building the
Hmm.
best site for everyone. So,
Hmm.
and they've very much so gone away from, um, you know, personalization. So are we
Hmm.
shifting back? From an experimenter's perspective, do you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
advice for us based on this
yeah,
deterministic shift to um, more of a probabilistic outcomes
yeah.
in search results?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this, and there's a part of me that loves this framework because everything is just easier if you have a framework, especially if it's a really binary thing, right? Like it used to be deterministic, now it's probabilistic. And that's how I first started thinking about this. And then to a certain degree, it's true, right? But there was also a lot of personalization and continues to be in traditional Google results. And that's been true for the past 10 years where if I search,
Mhm.
what's the best bank, and I'm in Collingswood, New Jersey, whoever's in San Diego, California, has seen a different experience. And so, and it's not just a location thing, right? It's based on what I've clicked on before.
Yeah.
There is a level of that probability that's in the mix there. But at the same time, I get the intent, and people who really hammer this hard, I do get what they're trying to communicate. I think that moving forward, to the best you can do to be visible in this probabilistic world, to me looks very similar to what you do to be visible in a deterministic world that's segmenting different results based on different audiences, right? It's creating content that is highly relevant to your audience. I think with large language models, with ChatGPT, especially with the push for memory, which we are seeing across
Mhm.
the board. and the ability and the unlock they all see with the more memory in the mix, the better results I can give, the better tone I can give, the better experience I can give, the more sticky I can make my product, the more people are going to use it. And so the way we are thinking about how to pull this through to a client strategy is, let's again take the Collingswood Bank example, thinking about what our products and services are and what they mean to the different personas we are targeting. So what do I need in a bank if I'm a stay-at-home mom with a few kids that are not yet in school? What
Right.
might I need then? Maybe I'm looking for early guidance on savings accounts, or um, like a drive-through experience because I don't want to get my kids out of the car. But that experience is very different than if I'm 18 years old and I'm looking for my first, adult checking account. And so my point here is that ChatGPT is going to know how to cater results to that mom of young kids, to that 18-year-old, to the 40-year-old guy who's looking for a loan for his business. And so I think the next wave of content still going to be highly relevant, highly, you want it to be unique, you want it to be useful to the people you're focused on. But I think we are going to get into more personalization and more catered experiences where today for SEO, we might say, okay, Collingswood Bank, you should have one page for your savings accounts. Maybe in the future, we would test, let's have a page about savings accounts that's very targeted to the mom of young kids. Let's have a page about savings accounts that's very targeted to the 18-year-old who's about to go to college. And in the past, with traditional SEO, it was a little risky to do that because then you're potentially kind of diluting your equity, and you want Google to associate this one page with this one topic, and you make that one page about everything. It's like the ultimate
Right.
guide to savings accounts in Collingswood, which sounds crazy. But potentially in this new world, it's easier for these large language models to very quickly scan through content and say, okay, here's what I want to grab. I want to grab this experience or that experience.
That actually, one of the components that we talked about was that every page had a component that has to be um, readable on it, like
Mhm.
every title, every paragraph, every should stand on its own because that's how large language models scrape.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
in the SEO world, it was always that way. People just
Mhm.
didn't do it well. And now
Mhm.
it's even more this way. And um, I, first of all, like I know a lot of SEO content writers that
Mhm.
don't write that way.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, can you help me better understand like why the urgency in like how large language like okay, the test that you all ran with the changing the footer, the content in
Mhm.
the footer for Seer, like that was
Yeah.
so eye-opening for me. Like, how do large language models work that is so innately different? Because I know that they're
Mhm.
using SEO
Mhm.
frequently, but what are they doing that's different?
It's more based on the probability of what the right answer is. And so the I think the reason the footer test worked is you send a signal about Seer. You say we have 130 plus enterprise clients and a 97% retention rate. And you put that on every site page through the footer. And 1,000 pages are now saying this about Seer. So that's sending a really strong signal. Why doesn't that work in Google? It used to work, and then people exploited it. And so Google has like 20 years of of a track record of understanding, okay, we're trying to do this, we're trying to match the best content with the best queries. And because SEOs are in the mix, sometimes they're doing things we shouldn't be doing. And
They're
if you
keyword
remember, if you
stuffing and we're going to tweak for these things, but large language models
exactly,
aren't, frankly,
they're not
as
there. Yeah.
savvy yet.
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
I think something
interesting.
is going to shift there because I know when we launched that footer test, somebody the person who did it was Nick's idea
Yeah,
actually. And Nick has a lot of experience. He's been with Seer for 5 years. I think he had a few years before that, but he wasn't around during those early days of SEO where it was just a shit show, right? And like some of the stuff we did like what there's just elements of the internet that have been ruined by SEOs. The best example is the
yeah,
recipe thing where you can't read a recipe without
yeah,
reading like somebody's life story.
yeah,
That's an
yeah,
SEO thing. And at the same time, it's because like, hey, it's a business, right? Like we're trying to get visibility, we're trying to get it however it works. So in the past, you can remember the footers used to look crazy, used to have these ridiculously long footers and you had a lot of hyperlinks within those footers, and that was sending the signal to Google of, hey, these 50 pages, this is what's most important. So it's the same mentality that we're using with this footer test. You see it also with another good example is in the past, something that was really popular, these private link networks or private blog networks where people said, oh, links are important. Okay, I'll spin up this network of like 500 different sites. They all link to each other. And then when I link to you, that's going to be worth a lot. I think the new version of that is something Will has called out a lot, which is these listicles, the best of listicles because by nature of ChatGPT wanting to get the right answer, if you ask ChatGPT, what's the best SEO agency, ChatGPT is going to look within its internal data, think about, okay, what do I know about SEO agencies? But then it's just going to Google what's the best SEO agency. And what ranks for that, what stays visible are these, here's the top 10 best SEO agencies. And guess what? Mine's number one and my friend's is number two. All of this starts to push us towards where we've gone with Google, which is a bad experience, which we're so hard on Google. I love Google. Google's really, really good. And
yeah.
I think all you have to do
Do you
is
remember a
exclusively.
world where you couldn't get an answer?
Yes, exactly.
There's a
Even,
great comic of, everybody sitting around. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to be able to
yes.
find an
I
answer?
mean, it's
Yeah,
so true. It's really good. And because it's so good and because you know how good it can be when it's not good, it's really annoying. And
yeah,
so like before all the stuff with AI search, the trend we started to see is appending Reddit at the end of any informational search because
yes.
people are like, well, I don't care what Google says, they're going to give me noise. I want to find the most relevant Reddit thread and Reddit search is really bad, so this is how I'm going to do it. That's still Google providing a pretty good utility. But my point there is, I think if large language models and especially ChatGPT, since they're at the forefront, if they don't figure out a way to better catch this stuff, we're going to have the same issue where right now people are like, oh, ChatGPT says they're the best SEO agency, so I'm going to give them a call. In the future, they're going to be like, wait, what is this? This top 10, this doesn't make sense. You start to lose the trust,
And
and
then
then
they'll
we're right
start
back
to
where we
tweak.
started.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you and Will have both warned that many old SEO KPIs aren't reliable.
Yes.
And so are there visibility metrics that tie to actual business outcomes
Hmm.
that you would
I think you
recommend?
I think you need to be looking at conversions. And conversions and any kind of bottom funnel metric is going to be really critical to track. I think that because
Are
a
you
lot of us
tying those conversions to impressions? So
you can
impressions
tie
and conversions or just conversions?
impressions are a good leading indicator.
Yeah,
But we haven't, I mean, even for traditional search, we have not reported on impressions in like 15 years, right? Like
yeah.
it's something you look at as part of diagnostics, as part of seeing, okay, what's working, what's not. But
Mhm.
you don't go to the C-suite and say, look at all these impressions I drove, right?
Yeah.
So we've long tried to be able to tell the story between, hey, here's our visibility, here's the traffic we're getting from it, here's the conversions we're getting from it. Now, though, we're not always, we might have the visibility and we might not get the traffic, but they might still come back and convert. And there's really not much different. Think about the experience of I've got this, educational content. Somebody searches something in the past, they clicked on my site, they read something, they did nothing else, they bounced. Now they might be experiencing your content and other content in an AI overview. They might be reading it, moving on with their day. Not much changes about their ability to convert or their likelihood to convert. And you can say, well, you can do all these things, I can cookie them. Well, most people don't. So most people, you've got way more opportunities than you have time in the day to do. So most people are just waiting and expecting, okay, I've got a low conversion rate on this content. That's fine. I think we have to think about visibility in a different way. And the end goal, what we're trying to work towards at Seer is a way to map all visibility for all priority sources of influence. And that can be Google, it can be Reddit, it can be Chat GPT. And you don't have to boil the ocean. Most brands don't have to boil the ocean, but what are those key priorities? And what are the hypotheses we as marketers have where I'm going after these core personas? Here's the products and services that make sense to them. Here's their pain points, all classic marketing, right? Like just
Yeah.
marketing 101. What do people need? How do we message that? And baking that into a measurement strategy, that becomes a bigger project. So I would say if you're like, I just need I need new goals, I need goals that make sense. I would just caution against keeping traffic as a KPI because I can guarantee every brand is going to get less traffic. It doesn't necessarily mean your content's not working though. So what does that mean for your bottom
But
funnel
tying it together
visibility?
is going to become more and more difficult and figuring that out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You're going to have to look at overall website conversions. And what you might expect is that the amount of conversions coming in through direct might increase, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you learn about a brand through ChatGPT, you're not going to click through right away, or it doesn't even give you the opportunity to click through right away. But is that
Which is really
person
interesting
still,
because my next question is like about
yeah.
experimenters. They're playing at the edges of conversion signals, user behavior. And I was going to
Mhm.
ask, what tactics should they adopt or drop in this AI GEO era? But I'm instantly thinking, like, we can start to advise on how you can measure through um, various different on off strategies how the direct numbers go up and down. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things that we can do with both,
Hmm.
you know, paid search and like we talked last time. I think I talked to you about SEO. I don't remember what I talked to
Hmm.
you about and what I talked to Jono about, but
Hmm.
actual SEO testing
Hmm.
with some of the pages and
Hmm.
doing some diff and diff analysis to find out what worked and what didn't work, so we can
Yeah.
actually do some of that. But do you have any
Right.
other thoughts about what experimenters can do?
I mean, I think that uh, one of the things that I've talked to Will about, and one of the recent things we've been riffing on and getting really excited about, is continuing to play out that example where I'm looking for a product or service. I go on ChatGPT, I see some brands, maybe I'm searching on Google, I see some brands in the AI overview. What is now pushing me to make that final decision? Now, what we see with traffic from AI search is it converts really highly. So if you can catch somebody and they go through the funnel and have all of their everything is answered, all their needs are met, and then they see the link, that's going to convert pretty well. But what happens when that's not the case? What Will and I were kind of riffing on is, okay, well, what is the role of paid social there? Because then that's interesting. And now we're kind of talking about like big kid marketing. This isn't just the SEO stuff. This is like the people with the big budgets of, wait a second, this is just campaign awareness. This is just trying to collect if you have these huge traditional campaigns. uh, through offline efforts, how do you then pull them through and back to your website? Paid social could be a really good mechanism for that, right? Especially
Right.
with some of the audience targeting that you can do for that. Paid search also may be an option, but I think that's where marketers have to start to focus is the sky is not falling. You can still get you can make a good amount of money through ChatGPT if you're well optimized, if you're ranking, if you're visible. If you're not though, and if you're, yeah, I'm here, sometimes I'm here, my visibility is kind of on and off, then you need to think about what are those other signals where you are fighting and buying attention with this target audience that's going to help pull through to finish the conversion.
One more question and then we go to the lightning round.
Okay.
Um, so AI browsers and agentic systems on the horizon.
Mhm.
How do you advise brands to future-proof their discovery strategies?
I would say you need to keep up with everything that is being released and have some system for identifying what is signal, what is noise. One of the strongest signals I've seen just in the last few days is what ChatGPT is doing with their partnership with Etsy, and I believe with brands on Shopify platforms, where you can purchase directly
This
through
is like
ChatGPT.
hot news, like
Yep,
last week, like big
yep,
news.
yes, yes, it is. And I think it's, first of all, ChatGPT has released like 38 things in the past 2 weeks. So if you
This
are
is
the average
probably because of
marketer,
their OpenAI's acquisition of Statsic. I feel like this has to be connected.
it could be. I mean, it's also like they do this time of year too, like models are, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's around quarterly. I don't know. I don't know. It could, there could be a lot of things. Also, OpenAI is a ridiculously big business. So like, if every team and division is working at the same clip, yeah, it's impossible to keep up with everything that is happening. So that is the first thing I would say is you need some way to cut through the noise and identify the signal, whether that's a system you maintain,
Yeah.
whether that's your agency or like, hey, I need you guys to keep an eye on that. That's what we try to do for our clients at Seer. But this is signal in many ways. One, because it's going to be so widespread, right? Perplexity has already implemented this, but Perplexity is a very small piece of the pie relative to ChatGPT. And when you see the headlines, I think it's going to be easy for a lot of e-commerce brands to think, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with me because I'm not on Etsy, I'm not on Shopify. Well, OpenAI open sourced the code and the protocol by which brands can set up their shopping platform to be accessible through ChatGPT. That's something that I think is going to be very, very big this holiday season. We had a good conversation at Seer the other day about it because you think about the spectrum of online purchases, and you've got your impulse purchases where it's like, I see it, I buy it. I'm not talking to ChatGPT about it. I just want it. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is like I'm buying, maybe a new
A
HR
laptop.
platform. Yeah, or a
Yeah.
lab, yes, something big, right? Some
Yeah.
kind of big ticket thing. I might use AI, I might use Google, I might phone a friend, but I'm probably not gonna convert on one chat. But there's a lot of products in the middle, especially when you think of holiday shopping, which I know some people love. I personally do not. My first thought was, oh my God, I'm gonna be able to actually get my husband like stuff he likes and not have it be like, oh my God, it's December,
See,
23rd in my
my
house.
first thought when I heard this was that if the brands can get the prompts, how much information that the
I
brands are
know,
going to
but they won't
get.
they
But
won't
I,
give you the prompts though. I know. I know.
but it would be
But you can see
amazing.
but you can see where people are landing. This is another thing that I think not enough people are doing because your top landing pages from AI search are rarely the same as your top landing pages from traditional search. So going back to the experimenting thing again, what are your CTAs? What are your calls to action on these pages where people are getting dropped? Because 9 times out of 10, when you start to dig in, it's like, whoa, what is this weird page from 2024? And oh yeah, actually it is pretty good in some ways. This is what ChatGPT is choosing and dropping most people on who enter my site through AI search, but there's no way to convert. So we've started to do this at Seer with like, oh, there's some random blog posts that are
But
getting a lot
don't
of
you think,
traction.
I mean, OpenAI is, I mean, not that they need money, but don't you think they're going to start looking for income sources for advertising? And instead of advertising, don't you think they're going to start selling
I
the
do.
prompts
I
to
do.
brands?
I do. And I think they actually do really need money because the amount of energy they need to create and
The
fund to make all
compute.
this work is ridiculous.
Mhm.
So there's two things on that. First of all, there's the shopping. Sam Altman has said a lot. People say a lot though, and then do the other thing. So who knows? But he said a
Oh my
lot about
God.
that. Yeah.
Empire of
If we,
AI. That's all we have
yes.
to say.
Yes, right. If so, he said like the Google ad experience is broken. I want to improve it. Here's actually how I think he improves it. Another thing OpenAI just released earlier this week is Pulse. This, or maybe it was last week, but Pulse is basically a way if you pay the $200 a month tier for ChatGPT, every morning it gives you 5 to 10 things you care about, like it's delivered in cards. It's kind of like Google Discover, but a better experience because it is more tuned in to it can be connected to your Gmail, it can be connected to your calendar, so it can give you a brief of what you're going to do that day. If I was just researching different leadership strategies through ChatGPT, maybe it gives me a relevant article. That is the perfect place for them to start to monetize because it at least lets Sam say, see, this is a better way. You already care about these leadership articles. So, of course, I had to, it makes total sense to give you an ad from Franklin Covey or whoever as part of your pulse if you don't want to pay the $200 a month, which most consumers are not going to. Between that and the ability to purchase right through ChatGPT, there's absolutely ads coming. And I think in the last few days, they've openly said they're looking for somebody to come on and lead an ads business and a monetization strategy. All that is coming.
But all they have to do is sell the prompts. Okay.
Yeah. Which maybe they
Uh,
will. Maybe they will as part of
yeah,
this to the
maybe they will.
advertisers.
Um, oh, good. We have time for quick
Yes.
predictions first.
Okay.
If you were sitting with a CMO or head of experimentation, what's the single biggest shift you'd urge them to make?
The single biggest shift I would urge a CMO to make is to be open-minded about the heuristics and the the rules of thumb they have used to get to this point in their career, because a lot of that is shifting. KPIs should shift, your strategies should shift. Not to say everything is changing, but even the structure of your team and what your team is responsible
Oh, I
for
like that.
as as we move into a world where I think agents are going to replace some of these manual or semi-automatic workflows that we do. All marketing teams are ripe for disruption in this way. You still need great people, you still need all of that, but it's going to look different. And the nature of search is changing. You're going to need differently skilled people to continue to elevate your brand.
And so you even may have to go so far as to change like the educational requirements that we've been
Yeah.
so hung up on for so long.
Hmm.
That's one of the things I've been really pushing
Hmm.
people to look at your job descriptions.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a danger that AI consolidates visibility towards giant incumbents, making it harder for niche or new voices to be seen?
I think there's always that possibility. I am more optimistic. I am very hopeful that true personalization and truly impressive technology is going to help us find and be connected with brands, products, and services that are actually the best possible fit, and not just the brands who will pay the most for the most visibility
Yeah.
on paid search. And I think long that Google has wanted that future. And with the system Google has built, it is very, very difficult to achieve that future. We work with brands who have had a website for, since the 90s. those brands can get away with a lot more than a brand that just started last year or 2 years ago. And the brand that started 2 years ago might be the best fit for me, and I'll never see them in the Google search results
Right.
because of that
But you might
dichotomy.
now in the new AI world.
That's what I'm hopeful, right? Anything can happen, but I do see that as a very possible
I can
set
see
of
that. I
outcomes.
saw a really hopeful article that I actually shared in the TLC Slack about how, that the echo chambers in politics that
Mm,
everybody's in, and AI is actually helping that
mhm,
because people have this belief that AI is neutral. And
mhm,
so whether it is or not, in a
mhm,
situation where people were served the same content in an echo chamber right, an echo chamber left, and
mhm.
in AI, they judged the content that was in the AI as neutral.
Yeah,
It was the same content in all
yeah,
three scenarios.
yeah. That's so
And so they're
interesting.
like, yeah, they were like, well, it was given to me by AI, it must be neutral. They were all
Yeah,
neutral.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they were like, oh, interesting. If this is the case, and we
Mhm,
know that AI will, in fact, default to less bias, and
mhm,
if people will go to AI to ask for
mhm,
political content, it may
mhm.
be a way of lowering political bias and reducing the echo chamber effect. And I was like, oh,
That would be
please.
amazing.
Right. Anyway, all right, let's start the lightning round. The idea
Okay,
here, I have 5 questions, 60-ish seconds. Some of them you'll be able to
okay,
answer like this, but top of your mind, don't spend too much time thinking about it.
okay. Got it.
Cool. What's
Yep.
the biggest change in how people discover things today versus 5 years ago?
The biggest change in how people discover things today is in how they're discovering them. So 5 years ago, we were still very much in a keyword search mentality where you have to take what you want, take what you're thinking about, translate that into a keyword, which I do think is a valuable skill to have, not for nothing, but it's not it without friction, right? And there's a learning curve to it. Today, you don't need to translate your thoughts into a keyword, which means you can say whatever it is you need, who you are, what you're looking for, and be met potentially with exactly the right answer.
Nice. What's the one thing brands should do differently tomorrow to stay visible in the age of AI?
One thing that brands should do to stay visible tomorrow in the age of I think a lot of brands are going to be under the false pretense that their website does not matter anymore. And I hear this and I'm starting to kind of smell it already, where people are like, well, people don't go to websites anymore. They just go to ChatGPT. Like, no, they're still going to websites. You're getting less traffic. You're getting less traffic on the content that people looked at and then bounced from. That's certainly happening. And overall, you might be getting less traffic, but people still need websites. Will they always? I don't know. But at least the way the AI search is structured today, websites are critically important, right? Because these AI search agents are going off and doing searches on search engines like Google or like Bing. Those search engines are still reliant on your website. And so I think trying to resist the temptation of, oh, there's all this new stuff, we've got to stop doing something. That is true, but you should not stop doing your website.
What should CROs, experimenters, stop doing right now because it's already broken?
Ooh, what should CROs and experimenters stop doing right now? I mean, okay, so I'm not a CRO by trade, but one thing I could see being maybe a red herring or a false negative or a false positive rather. I could see the reduction of traffic being something that folks need to grapple with. And I know you want a certain level of traffic in order to run a statistically significant
That's
test,
right.
right? think you also have to prepare for a future state of the internet where you're not, the traffic is just going to be lower. And so I don't know if that means you have to be ready to pay for more traffic to get your statistical significance, or if that means we have to be able to make recommendations based on less data, right? Actually, I think in general, that's going to be true. I think we're coming out of this golden era of performance marketing before all the privacy stuff has started to blow up, where you can measure so much and understand so much nuance about what worked, what didn't work, what language is effective, what visual is effective. I think we're going to continue to move away from that. And so experimenters who can be comfortable advising their clients with less data than they previously had, or even different types of data, I think that's an area to lean into.
That's a really, really important point. Because also, by the way, just because it's less traffic, as long as your conversions stay level,
Right,
yeah,
right.
that's a really good point. What's the most misunderstood thing about AI search?
I think one of the most misunderstood things about AI search is people want to think about it in a similar lens to how they think about traditional search. And I see two ends of the spectrum here. I see people thinking about it, it's the same as Google, and I'm going to treat it the same. And it's very different technology, right? And it's a different experience. Then I see people at the other end of the spectrum yelling, it's nothing like Google, and you're thinking about it all wrong. And it's like, well, that might be technically true, but let's find somewhere in the middle to meet, because it's a new search experience. There's some things that are similar. The core thing that I feel like once this clicks for people, it is really, really helpful to and creates the ability to have a good understanding about the strategies within AI search, is the concept of where information and where answers are coming from, right? Because there's two different systems at play. There's the training data that these models were based on. So if you ask a model, what year was Barack Obama born? It knows that. It doesn't have to search it. But if you ask a model, what is Barack Obama up to these days? It might have some information if the training data is, through 2024, but it's also going to perform a web search. And that web search is very, very similar to how a user would perform a web search, except for the fact it's a robot reading it. And so it's not somebody clicking and saying, oh, what's on the first page or the second page. A large language model can just instantly absorb the first 5 or 10 pages of search results. So you get that instant injection of information, and the combination of the training data and that web data is going to create your answer. I think once you wrap your head around, okay, that's how it works, you can have much better informed conversations with your strategy team, with your marketing team, and different expectations for what is or isn't possible.
And if you could recommend one resource, a blog, a book, a podcast, a person that everyone should know related to this topic, what or
I will
who is it?
I don't want to be self-serving here because that is not our ethos. So I'm going to do a non-seer
Mhm.
answer with this. And what I would recommend is following and even consider subscribing to the paid version of Kevin Indig's newsletter.
Mhm.
He does a newsletter called Growth Memo. Kevin Indig has been in the SEO space for a very long time. I don't actually know what his gig is right now, but it seems to be like just true SEO R&D. And he produces some really, really great studies and information that are so thought provoking. Always start a conversation at Seer and help Will and I think about, okay, what's next in this space.
Love it. All right. So you got through all of them. Fantastic.
Nice.
Um, who should I interview next? Um, inside or outside this space?
Okay. I mean, if you can get a conversation with Kevin, he's
Awesome.
really
Yeah.
good. He's a fun guy to talk to. He's a really, really super smart guy. If you want to if at any point you want to get a little more in the weeds,
Mhm.
Nick Hagler on our
Mhm.
team,
Oh,
he
I'm
has,
talking to Nick Tuesday next week, I
oh,
think.
perfect.
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, then I would say Kevin. Who else do I see in this space? You know who's really interesting? And actually, if you're in London, are you familiar with Crystal Carter?
I am not.
Crystal Carter is, I think, the head of AI at Wix, and she has been doing a lot, and she has access to some interesting data because Wix is like the website
Yeah, yeah.
platform. So she's got access to some really interesting data. And she's just a lovely, fun person to talk to and connect with. And she's in the UK. She's originally from the US, but she's living in the UK.
Oh, that'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
can or you or Nick, one of you is going to give me a introduction to somebody at Peak, right?
I think that's Nick. So
That's
I can
Nick.
introduce
Okay.
you to Crystal. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That would be
Yeah, of course.
lovely. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Last favor, send me, you can take it with your Zoom or Google Meet or whatever technology you all use. Take a bunch of fun screenshots of yourself
Okay. Got it.
making fun faces
Nice.
and send them to me. And like seriously, like, have fun with it. And then I'm going to use those for the picture for the next blog post.
Nice. I love it. Okay, will
Okay.
do.
And you have to have that background on and that shirt.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it right after this. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right,
Awesome.
good stuff.
Yay.
This
Thank
was
you so
fun. Thank you,
much.
Kelly. Yeah,
Yay.
thank you. Of
All
course.
right.
All
Take
right,
care.
you
Bye.
too. Bye.